Hello, I'm Neil Whelan and welcome to the Wesleyan podcast. In this episode, we're looking at wellbeing in the workplace. Wellbeing at work has always been important, but with the pandemic it became a top priority for companies and organisations everywhere, from us here at Wesleyan to the doctors, dentists and teachers we serve. This podcast looks at the kind of things Wesleyan has been doing to help its staff and provides some tips and insights about how organisations can improve their culture to ensure they take care of their colleagues both now and when the pandemic is finally behind us. Laura Weaver will be asking the questions. But first, here's Kelly Collum, Wesleyan's Employee Engagement Officer.
My role at Wesleyan is Employee Engagement Officer. And that essentially is to understand how our people are feeling, how engaged they are at work at any kind of present time. And as a business, then we can then look to support them in a better way. So things I also lead on is everything employee wellbeing. So that could be from introducing new employee benefits to organising initiatives, speaking directly to our people and also engaging with our leadership team so that they understand how our employees feel and what we can do to support them from an engagement or wellbeing perspective.
It's really interesting. So obviously Wesleyan's such a large company with a lot of employees. What do you do to support and create a state of wellbeing amongst so many people?
So we've got about 1,500 employees across different locations at the moment. So it's important that we have got wellbeing resources from kind of the corporate sense to support our people. So we've got an employee assistance programme. So that's a 24/7 hotline where an employee can call up and speak to a counsellor, a lawyer, professional people that can support them with any problems that they may be facing at that time. And that service is actually also available for their immediate family as well. So they can ring on behalf of a partner or a child. If they've got a child over the age of 16 or a partner, they can also call up as well. We have a fantastic team of mental health first aiders, and they are across the business, and they are there to support our employees, and they can call them up and speak to them directly to talk through anything that they may be facing. And we also do training for managers as well. So we've done things like boot camps, yoga sessions. We've moved to kind of the virtual world over the last 12 months, but we do all sorts of kind of physical fitness and initiatives. But for me, in order to create a meaningful state of wellbeing, as you've said, it has to start with the culture of an organisation, because we could have all the benefits and all the support resources for our employees, but if we've not got a culture and environment where people can be themselves, where they can be open and honest and speak to their manager or speak to their employees, then almost these resources and support that we have become less meaningful. So for me, it's making sure that we've not only got the support there from a professional sense, but also that as a culture we're really supporting wellbeing.
Okay, yeah, that is really interesting. And in terms of that, from the point of view of like our dental clients, so what could perhaps like a principal dentist who has employees, what could they be doing to kind of implement to support their employees' well-being that we've kind of tried and tested ourselves that you think would work quite well for a smaller business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even in a smaller business, I think it is really beneficial to make sure at least you've got one person that is their mental health first aider, somebody that has gone through that training so that they can have a wellbeing and mental health conversation with somebody. Just as you would in an office, you'd have a physical first aider for someone that was to get injured. I do think that we need to have the mindset of that, you do need to have a mental health first aid too. So that's worked brilliantly for us, and I know our people have felt really supported by that group of people. So, in a dental clinic where there are only a handful of employees, I do think that it would be beneficial if they had somebody that was mental health first aid trained. I think as well, it's always good to have some in-house initiatives and things that you can look forward to doing. So, we've done things like taking up something new or and sharing that and inspiring other people to do something that might kind of help them in their mindfulness. Even things like reading that book that you keep saying that you're going to pick up, but you end up spending your lunch hour on your phone or watching TV. But if you kind of set it as an initiative to say, right, in this month we're going to do something new, we're going to do the things that we've been putting off, and we're going to talk a bit more to each other about how we feel, that's always a good starting point, because sometimes you do need a little push, and to actually have almost like an initiative or a plan, it does support that, but then it's become a more natural thing into, going into the future of the workplace. And also my final point would be to really look at what resources that you have available to you already, because there will be things. So I know that, our dental customers, they have access to the Wellbeing Wesleyan Hub, where on there they can access like mental health support. They can find, tips and guidance to even create kind of small lifestyle changes, but don't forget kind of what you have access to already, and make sure that you are talking about that in the workplace.
That does make sense. So in terms of just going back to the mental health first aider, how would a dental practice kind of go about getting that kind of training? Where would they need to look to get that?
So there's different courses that you can go on, but I think the one that's predominantly used mostly in the UK, and the one that we've certainly signed up to, it's Mental Health First Aid England. So they, at the moment, they do online training, obviously in the current climate they're still in, but we've experienced with our employees, we've done training virtually, but we've also done it in person as well. Both are really good, and we haven't let the pandemic stop us from keeping the training going, so you can get ongoing support after your kind of initial training period as well.
Just on that point, in terms of the pandemic, obviously it's changed all of our lives. Has it changed your approach in terms of the support that staff and colleagues kind of need?
Yeah, I think for us, has been really important to just have a two-way conversation and to not make any assumptions, because I think the pandemic has kind of shown that, even people that might have said before that they had never suffered with a mental health problem or illness, that actually they've experienced some changes to their mental health. So, and we've seen that in our sickness records and absence as well. For the first time ever, kind of in the history of us recording sickness, we've seen more people off with a mental health illness than we have a physical illness or problem. So to kind of adapt our approach because of the pandemic, I think we have to continue that, speaking to our employees, listening to what they want and what they're telling us, and to really take it on board. And I use data quite a lot as well, so I have access to a number of sources of anonymous data, so things like how many calls we get into our employee assistance programme and what the nature of those calls are, what our mental health first aiders are talking to employees about, and also the sickness absence as well. So kind of looking at those three things combined, it gives me a real broad picture of the things that our employees are facing. So then I use that to make sure that any efforts or anything that I'm doing, whether it be implementing a new benefit or doing a focus on something or giving managers more support to talk about something specific, that it's always focused on a real relevant and meaningful topic at that period of time for people, because what we don't want to be doing is focus on completely the wrong thing when we've got the data to say actually our people are feeling really anxious at the moment, so how can we support anxiety at work, as a kind of an example.
So I guess in terms of that, then it's really important for smaller businesses as well to kind of record these sort of conversations and keep track of it, like you say, kind of gather data around how people are feeling so that they can put the right sort of plans in place to support themselves and support their colleagues.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was watching a documentary on TV over the last few weeks, and there was something really powerful from that I took away from it. And it said, when you ask somebody, "Are you okay?" but you suspect that they're not okay, or even sometimes when you don't suspect anything, just ask them a second time, because if you say, "Are you sure you're okay?" that second time is when they will most likely say, "Well, actually, no," or, "well, there is this that's playing on my mind." And that's when then these conversations open up. So don't always take things at face value. So it doesn't matter, I think, whether it's a business, large or small, it's within your friendship group, it's within your family, as long as you are asking, "Are you okay?" and do it a second time, then that is when these things will open up and we can really start to help people, in particular around mental health.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting, and it's really good to kind of get the insights from me as to what really seems to work. But what about yourself? What do you do if you're having a bad day to kind of turn things around?
For me, like getting out for fresh air is like being a bit of a saviour to me. Over the last 12 months, I like living in an apartment, and I have got a small balcony, but it's not the same as having a full garden. And especially like in the lockdown one, when the weather was just like beautiful, I was so jealous of everyone being able to sit outside and get outdoors. You know, and working from home and feeling like, you know, cooped up in a little apartment. Walking has been a huge thing. So just getting fresh air, it switches you off from work, or it certainly switches me off from work. And even in the way, like, you know, I live with my partner, and sometimes that, you know, we work in the same place, and we were working off the same table for like 6 months, but we're not actually talking. So to go out for a walk, that's when you like really talk to someone. So I found that like, you know, great to just have those like proper conversations where you're not scrolling on your phone, you're not being distracted by the TV or by your laptop. So getting fresh air and having a walk has been really important for me. And I'd say as well, packing up at the end of the day. I think before I knew that this was going to be like a long-term working from home situation, I'd just leave my laptop out. And because I was on the dining room table, it would just make me just feel a bit stressed, just having mess everywhere. So I bought like a ottoman type thing where I can now just pack away my laptop, pack away my notepad, and then you know, get it out fresh the next day. But that whole switching off was becoming a bit of a problem at first, and I think it was just because I could see all my things. But again, I think it's really important to talk. It's great having a good, solid like friendship group and a close knit family where you know that you can share those things with. And sometimes like you know, you can bottle things up, and you can definitely blow them out of proportion in your own head and things, and catastrophize. So I think talking is always just, you know, you don't realise how actually therapeutic it can be to just let things out. But walking is a great way to do that because you've got nothing else to do other than walk and talk.
Yeah, so I think for me the key point there is, particularly for perhaps a dentist that might be listening, would be just make sure you're not overworking yourself, and you have that space where you do have your friends around you, and that you do switch off from work where you can. As I'm sure you know, it must be really difficult when times are busy to kind of do that. So putting mechanisms in place to do that must be really important.
Yeah, and I think like at the moment, I know like dentists are like back to work, aren't they? So they'll be working in their surgeries and clinics. So you know, that's brilliant to be able to kind of get out into a different location and see some new people that you don't necessarily live with. But also to maybe have a look at some appreciation as well for either maybe customers or family members or friends that haven't had that opportunity yet as well. So whilst there's obviously some challenges that comes with, you know, going back to work and seeing customers in the public again and the risks involved, I think, you know, if people aren't quite themselves, if those customers that you're used to seeing might seem different, there might be a reason for that, and it could be that this is the first time they've left the house in months or spoken to someone, and there's definitely some anxiety there.
Yeah, actually, if I just we could just expand on that, because I think that's a really good point. So if I just kind of position a slightly different question, so dentists kind of struggling at the moment mental health wise, because even though they've got like a different place to work, I think their targets are really, really high. Yeah. So their workplace is quite stressful. But I do like your point about like think about the customers that have been stuck at home and haven't been able to get out, and yeah, I think that would be quite a good one. So if I sort of pose a different question, so in terms of dentists that are in the dental practice, do you think there's anything else that they need to think about around kind of like their customers' well-being, and you know, perhaps they're working from home or something, that they need to think about?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking from my own experience of having worked remotely for such a long period of time and now being able to, you know, go out a bit more now the restrictions are lifted, there is an element of anxiety there and a bit of worry, whether that be getting on the public transport or a train to get to work or to go and see a dentist or a doctor. So I think from a dental perspective, you know, you might have customers that you've seen over the years and know quite well, but they might be coming now back feeling a bit differently. So they might not be the customer that you remember necessarily. They might have their own stresses and anxieties. It might be the first time they've left the house and they're worried about being so close in proximity to another person for the first time after I've spent all this time with one person in your house. So I do think there needs to be some consideration that there will be probably a slightly longer term impact of the pandemic, even post the lockdown restrictions being eased and being able to get back to some form of normality.
Thank you so much for your time. I think your insights have been really interesting, and it's great to see that there's so much support available for dental clients of Wesleyan as well. Have you got any kind of last thoughts that you think we need to think about?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Laura. It's been really nice to be able to kind of talk and share and hopefully give some ideas that can benefit our customers that are in the dental area. So I think my final takeaway and thoughts would be kind of 3 key things then. So keep talking to your colleagues, ask them twice, are they okay? And understand then, what is it specifically that might help them. So keeping it really relevant to your colleagues so that you can support them. The second point would be all around then your patients. So knowing that they might be feeling differently, coming across differently, but just to be aware that the last 12 months has kind of brought all sorts of changes and that this could be the first time they've left the house. So just a little bit of consideration for how things might have changed from that side of things. And lastly, I would say, familiarise yourself with what free resources that you already have access to. So I think I mentioned the Wesleyan Wellbeing Hub is a fantastic tool, but there's also all sorts of things on the internet like Mind have a great YouTube page with so many different videos. So, really explore what you can access for free. And then if you want to start investing in some training like mental health first aid as well, I couldn't recommend that enough. So that would be my top 3 takeaways from this.
And that's our show for this week. Thank you to Laura and Kelly. As Kelly said, Wesleyan is providing non-financial support to customers and members with its Wellbeing Hub. You can find that at wesleyanwellbeing, or one word, .co.uk. We also have our COVID assistance site at covid19.wesleyan.co.uk, where there's all sorts of help available around mental health and physical wellbeing. If you want to know more about how we can look after the wellbeing of your finances, go to wesleyan.co.uk, where you'll be able to book a no-obligation appointment with a financial consultant. And if you're a dentist, you may be interested in what Practice Plan can do to help you. You can find them at practiceplan.co.uk. You can find out more about Wesleyan on our social media channels as well. Find us on Twitter at Wesleyan, and search for us on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast on whatever app you're listening to. But that's it for now. So until next time, thanks for listening.